Knives.
Knives.
Knives. Do you like these guys' knives?
Love it.
Mutsumi Hinoura.
Mutsumi Hinoura.
So does Tsukasa Hinoura, his dad, make any famous knives?
Yeah, he is legendary, right? Because he makes these knives like river gems.
Yeah, they're so good.
Some called umrus, like different. But his signature move basically is to hand fold Damascus, and for the river jumps and the umru, he torsions them or twists them. If you haven't watched our Spring Hammer first one, he actually explains why he's the way he does. He does that twist, torsion Damascus really to showcase his skills. It really tells that's not pre-laminated, it's not pre-bought steel from the steel factory.
Yeah, you can't mistake what he's making, and it's a bit of a signature. It's also sculpture, it's art.
Yeah,
right. It is a thing that is unique to every one of them every time. It's a functional piece of art, truly. They kind of did a little demo for each of them, did a demo separately, but we want to talk about Mutsumi Hinoura today. Mutsumi Hinoura, Hinoura Senior's son, is making his own knives now. I mean, he's been doing it for a little bit. We're getting more of them now. Tell us more about his knives.
He's been working with his father for quite some times now. When he finished his technical college, Mutsumi-san didn't really want to become a blacksmith. Like lots of actually blacksmiths that
weird.
we know.
Didn't want to grow up and do what his dad did.
Yeah,
but now he's doing what his dad does.
Very
interesting.
Yeah, it's very familiar story though, right? Like
Yeah, absolutely.
Nigaro was like that.
Yeah.
Hiroshi Kato-san was like that.
Yeah.
But it changed when the Mutsumi Hinoura-san, I think, was at trade show or some sort of place where he saw the knives that's made by his father. And so other people, how they react, how they are so pleased with his work, his father's work. And he got so impressed by it. The craftsmanship, the skill, art, and also those end users, how happy they are. And that's when everything changed. So he decided to, proceed.
It sounds like he had that aha moment when he realized that his dad was so talented that maybe he should put a second thought to learning from him and becoming his own blacksmith.
So now he's in charge of a brand called Ajitkataya. Ajitkataya is this kind of the sub-brand of the Hinoura family, right? There is one so-called Tsukasa Saku, which means made by Tsukasa. Made by his father. And they have sub-brand called Ajitkataya. In Japanese, this is called Yago. Yago is this very traditional identifier for, especially in the old countrysides and stuff like that. Many people had the same last name in a small village, so they had to have the identifier. Like you're from the family of this house and that house. And Ajitkataya is the old name for their family. And
cool.
A lot of them had the name end with ya. It's ya means like house or the things like that.
Like a place.
Place or the roof or like those meaning to it. So the Ajitkataya is their old identifier. It's not necessarily a last name, but they use that as a branding or the sub-branding of their knives right now. And they make kitchen knives as well as they have hatchets, and that's where actually their tradition came from.
Well, and yet we learned while we were there, it was really interesting. They have very big power hammers that they use for hammering out the blades. The hammers are much, much larger than that we see in any other sort of knife related place, but it turns out it's because they started making hatchets. So they would have needed that bigger hammer to work bigger pieces of steel, but they're still using that same stuff to make these knives.
They're still producing some hatchets and stuff, and they're fantastic. It's like in such a forestry areas, and they have lots of rice fields that they have to do a lot of work with those wood cutting tools.
Right.
So now we have these lines of knives that are under Ajitkataya branding and almost like exclusively made by and forged by the Mutsumi Hinoura-san. Well, the real main difference, difference between the Tsukasa Saku and Ajitkataya, it's I guess an approach. So the Ajikataya line is more of their streamlined functional
yep.
knives, right? The where Tsukasa Saku is it's hand folded, forge welded in house. You know, sharpening done by hand, especially at the end. He takes each knife, goes through the several different sharpening stones, do it everything by hand. Where these ones are a little bit more streamlined, so that the say the bevels, they grind it by the water wheel, bell sander, and sandblast.
Gotcha.
To get the really nice polish and that the little smoky finish on them.
Well, safe to say that his dad is incredibly talented and very, very practiced. So it would be reasonable that he needs to spend his time working on the functional properties of the knife before he really steps up to the level that his dad's at. But I hope that one day we get to see him following those footsteps too.
Absolutely. The Tsukasa-san mentioned that he's really hoping to see that there is going to be not the Tsukasa Saku, means made by Tsukasa, but Mutsumi Saku, right? Made by Mutsumi. He was mentioning that he would really hope to see that come in very near future.
Yeah, that would be very cool too.
Another cool thing about the Mutsumi-san is that his involvement, I guess, in that the region.
Something specific to the Niigata region is their government supports them in helping them to progress their community. And one of the things that Mutsumi Hinoura does is he takes part in organizing a festival called Open Factory Days. It's really cool. It's a big festival. It's a big week. It was actually the week before we got there. And all of these blacksmiths open their doors. And so anyone who's around there can go through, get demonstrations, and they get to really show off what it is they're doing behind their doors on a daily basis.
And they've been doing it for probably like 5-6 years now, and he was actually head of the organization I think 1 year.
Yeah.
So he's like really heavily involved in that organization and trying to revitalize the I guess economy and the traditional craftsmanship like that. I've heard the stories like the younger generations, not necessarily this workshop, although they did have one young apprentice or the workers working for the Ajitkataya. But when we were at the other knife makers, what they were saying is that festival had such an impact to those younger generations, the new workers, that some of them actually came, interviewed, and started working because of that.
That's awesome.
The open actually. They call it.
I could get it. I could see if you're a young person and you're trying to figure out what you want to do, to go and watch these folks and the work they're doing, and to think, that's something I want to do, to get inspired, because watching it is quite inspiring. If you like doing things with your hands, watching these blacksmiths work is absolutely outstanding.
One of the things about his knives that I want to mention is that his knives, all forged by hand, it's got really nice distal taper. Well, the taper from the thick spine, thick here at the handle, and gradually tapers it down to the tip. That's great because it gives you a little bit more agility and strength at the heel, and a really finesse edge at the tip. But at the same time, how he grinds and how he sharpens, he leaves a little bit thicker than some other blacksmith, but he never over sharpens and never overexpose the core steel. What that means is that his knife's going to cut really nice and smooth, but also softer steels for protection, right? So it has enough protection all the way to the edge here, so that it doesn't chip as easy. Overexposing the core steel will be like when you overexpose the core steel, you're exposing more of the fragile part of the knife. So what he's doing is limiting the exposure of the fragile part, resulting in a knife that's not going to chip as easily. Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Now I have a question. How does that lend itself towards future sharpening?
One of the things about again his knives is that his bevels are not as high.
Right.
Right, so that hot rodding or thinning the blade, it makes it a little bit easier.
Nice.
Because it doesn't have that much of place or that much of areas to sharpen.
I really like when a blacksmith thinks about that next step of the person who's owning the knife and what their skill level is when it comes to sharpening. I find that really exciting because when you got a nice full carbon steel like knife, I find that exciting because with a full carbon steel knife like this, it's a great knife to get into doing your own sharpening and doing that thinning, or what we call hot rodding process. And I like that he's making it easier for anybody at home to learn how to use that type of technique.
Absolutely. Even though, like as we mentioned, Ajikataya line that the Mutsumi-san is in charge of, although he said, these are streamlined, it's it didn't take as much steps or the processes as his father's Tsukasa line.
Yeah, like not to take away from how beautiful his knives are. They're so cool. I like, they look very traditional to me. I like their sort of raw look, and he uses really nice handles. I think these are beautiful knives. They would last you forever, but that full carbon steel, they're going to change over time. They're going to patina, they'll break in. These are also a piece of art in their own way.
It's done very, very well.
Yeah.
And have always the end user in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the height on the Santoku. I feel like when you're chopping with it, you'll get a really nice rock to it, but that height gives me lots of clearance on my hand. I think these, with that bevel the way they are, they're going to drive through food really nicely, and still be, you'll get that really fine cut with them. But when you're cutting through something dense, I think you can do it quite confidently too.
Absolutely.
It'll travel through really nicely.
Yeah,
right?
I totally agree. And also, I love the shape of his gyutos. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, it is a cool shape, right?
It is different from the particular, I guess, the popular shape in that region, right? Like in that region, the popular or the more common or traditional gyuto shape is more like a Masashi-san's. It's got a little more flatter belly and goes up like this. His is more traditional European carve, right? It's very even, consistent carve from the heel to the tip. It gives you really nice to rock with.
They rock.
And roll.
All right, let's take a look at this Mutsumi knife, the hammered finish.
So, like many other younger blacksmiths in that region, like Mazaki-san, like the Toshihiro Wakui-san, and all other people, they all learned the skills from Yoshikane.
Nice, yeah.
Right? So, he didn't really go there to work for Yoshikane.
Okay.
But because it is like, it's a very small community. He goes there, talk to Kazuomi-san about knife making and everything. So he definitely learned a lot from from Yoshikane.
Yeah, I really like that. You see more of this type of finish that looks like that real classic Yoshikane knife. I think it's cool that they're all sort of learning from their elders in that region and making knives by, and they're making a finish that sort of pays homage to that. I love it. I think it's great.
So yeah, this is very, I guess, pay tribute to the Yoshikane Tsuchime line, right?
Yeah, that's so cool.
Well, if you want to purchase these knives, check the link in the description.
Yeah, or go to knifewear.com. We have so many knives you could look at, tons of stories, lots of videos like this. Our YouTube channel's filled with these little bios. I hope you enjoyed it, and get yourself a sweet knife. Hey, and if you want to learn more about Japanese knife makers, check out this next video. Do we sell these knives?
No, that's my personal, just kidding.
Knifewear?
Knifewear.
That's where the knife here. Knifewear?
Knifewear.
Knife there.
Knifewear, yeah.
.com?
Okay, yeah.
Knifewear.com.
Yeah. So,